meet. I'm Elena, excuse me. I'm Elena Mayer. I've emailed with some of you, but I'm overseeing the Vacant Lot Temporary Activation Program, and I work on the Link Initiative Suite more broadly. So I'd like to start by just kind of talking through how we've ended up at this program, what it is on a high level, and then we'll dive a little deeper first into the temporary activation RFP, and then into the permanent disposition RFP. So the goal of this program when we were developing it and putting it into the suite is that EDC wanted to work on these income mobility challenges that traditionally hasn't been the focus of our economic development agenda, but we did think it would be nice to have something in the suite of initiatives that connected to our core work, which is really real estate development and land use. So vacant lots was an opportunity where we saw that in distressed neighborhoods and poorer neighborhoods, city-owned vacant land actually represents a much larger share of the problem than it does in wealthier neighborhoods. So we were excited by the opportunity to do something with city-owned vacant lots in distressed neighborhoods. And we ended up focusing on Brownsville, East New York, and Ocean Hill because of the concentration of city-owned lots along more commercial corridors. So as you'll see more broadly across the city, 49% of the total vacant lots in distressed neighborhoods is owned by the city, which is much higher than the average in other parts of the city of 34%. But in these three neighborhoods that we're focusing in, there are 400 city-owned lots. So it's a significant problem. And so the opportunity that we saw that we'd like to support with these RFPs is to bring economic activity, retail diversification, job creation to these sites, reduce empty land and blight, and really bring new economic vigor into an area that we think is ripe for potential and is undervalued by the commercial market. So to briefly give the overview of the temporary activation program, there are 15 city-owned sites that are available through this RFP, and anyone is welcome to bid on one or all 15 of them if you're so inclined. They are all zoned for either commercial or manufacturing uses. Some are residentially zoned with a commercial overlay, but they're all approved for commercial or manufacturing use. The lots range from 1,000 to 20,000 square feet with an average lot size of around 7,000. More specific information on each lot is in the RFP. We also have a nice map in the back that lists the size of each lot and exactly where it is. That map is pulled right from the temporary use RFP. The RFP leaves the exact activation strategy open to you. We would love to see creative proposals about what you think would achieve these economic development objectives on these sites. With that said, we've done a little research before we put it out and did some research of national best practices, foot canvases of the neighborhood, local market analyses, and we've come up with a list that we think are particularly strong candidates. This doesn't mean that they'll be preferred to other proposals when we're selecting, but just to give an idea of what we were thinking, we listed them and provided descriptions in the RFP. Those are pop-up retail, food trucks and street carts, which could either be independent or soil-based farms or hydroponic or aquaponic greenhouses, innovation labs like MIT's Fab Lab, if you've heard of it, kind of a mobile group manufacturing collective space, and mobile community services. So for example, the Brooklyn Public Library Bookmobiles, or NYCEDC runs digital vans that are like mobile computer centers. So those are things that we thought would work well on these sites, but again, we're open to proposals of all kinds, so long as they in some way connect to economic development objectives. And I want to underscore that a little just because we know that there are lots of wonderful things that can be done on vacant lots. Our goal with this program is really to bring new economic activity. So we're really asking that whatever you respond with, that you try and hit at least one of those economic development goals, or explain why your proposal achieves a different goal that you think is equally valid and should have been included on our list. The activation timelines for these programs can vary. We know that something like an urban agriculture project by nature will take much longer than a pop-up retail site. So we'll ask you to propose your own timeline. We expect kind of an ideal timeline of 6 to 12 months of site activation, but if your project requires longer than that, we're open to it, and you should explain what that would be in your proposal. The timing situation is that EDC plans to sign probably 1-year land use agreements with the contractors. So for proposals that have a longer timeline, we'll work out some situation of how to handle only a 1-year land use agreement. So that'll have to be on a one-off basis, which is why 1 year is kind of the sweet spot for program length. Then to transition a little bit, we recognize that for some of these 15 sites, the best possible outcome based on their geography, based on a variety of factors, is that they're permanently purchased and put to long-term use to further develop businesses, to support particularly the IBZ in East New York. So 3 of the 15 sites that are listed on the temporary activation RFP are also listed in a permanent disposition RFP. It doesn't mean that people interested in using them for temporary uses can't bid on them, but we will be comparing those proposals to proposals for long-term and permanent acquisition. Those lots range in size from approximately 3,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet. 2 of the sites are in the IBZ and are zoned for light industrial, and 1 is located just outside and is zoned commercially. Again, on the map in the back, when we're done, you have a chance to look. Those sites are cross-hatched in orange, so it should be easy to identify. And they're marked in the temporary activation RFP as well. So this is a map of the site that we're looking at. The dark boundaries are the study area that we looked at when we began this program. It's bounded by Atlantic to the north, Buffalo and East 98th Street to the west, Linden and Hedgeman to the south, and Pennsylvania Avenue to the east. Within this site, which is about 2 square miles, there are 306 vacant lots. This includes privately owned vacant lots, which we are not looking at for this program, in large part because this is a pilot, and we really would love to prove the concept, to demonstrate that this kind of opportunity can yield great results. And then the hope is that EDC and the city can scale it and do a larger iteration and maybe in other neighborhoods as well. Oh no. There we go. This is the map of the 15 sites. Numbers 13, 14, and 15 are the ones cross-listed in the permanent disposition RFP. As you'll see, they're pretty spread out across the 2 square mile area. But we think that many of these are poised for great opportunity. And as you'll see, they range in sizes. For the temporary activation RFP, proposals don't need to use the full lot size. So just as an example, site 2 in particular is a weird shape. If part of that lot is attractive to you and not the full thing, that's fine. We're not requiring that you use every square foot. So I'm going to dive a little deeper into the logistics of your response and what we're actually looking for in proposals for the temporary use RFP, and then I'll pass it off to my colleagues who will dive deeper into the permanent disposition sites. So the scope of services is really the heart of the RFP. This is found in the consultant contract, which is an appendix to the RFP. It's kind of a cumbersome document, I apologize. But as you're reading through, you'll find that the first exhibit to the RFP is the consultant contract. This is the document that you and EDC would both sign. It's the exact document, so you have a sense of what you're getting yourselves into. In that consultant contract, towards the back, is the scope of services, which goes over what we are actually asking you and expecting you to do as a consultant for EDC. The first major task is finalizing and developing the activation plan. So in your proposal, you'll certainly make it clear what you plan to do, whether that's urban agriculture, pop-up retail, something else entirely. The first step of a contract would be fleshing that out, making sure that the entire strategy is developed, securing any necessary permits or other approvals. The second piece of the contract will be constructing any necessary space and cleaning up the sites. These sites have not been touched by us, so you'll see the photos in the RFP. Most of them are in pretty good shape, but they'll certainly need a little bit of cleanup. So we know that's part of the process. We'll build it into the timeline and what we expect from you. That'll also be if you're thinking about a pop-up facility, giving you time to actually build the facility, work with a contractor. If you're working with street cart vendors, perhaps you'll want to build a commissary of some sort to park that in overnight. But any building needs to be a temporary build. It needs to be removable on a very short timeline. That's the whole idea of the pop-up essence. So we're not looking for anything that requires DOB building permits. In fact, that would be problematic. The next major part of the scope of services is overseeing and managing the project for your proposed timeline. We expect our consultant to really be involved in both the day-to-day and the higher level management of the project and ensuring that you're meeting the goals that you've proposed and that we've agreed to. Ensuring program goals are achieved, and also just staying in touch with EDC, probably through regular check-in calls, through various reports. That's all sketched out in the scope of services, kind of what we expect. All of that is negotiable when we're negotiating contracts, but in the scope of services draft that you have is what is the baseline that we're expecting to come to the table with. Also in the RFP and here is our breakdown of which lots we think are particularly suited to different uses. This is based on, again, our own market analyses and our own canvassing of the neighborhood. If you are really excited by Site 1 and don't think that pop-up retail is what you want to do, our recommendation, again, is by no means the required proposal topic, but this just gives you a sense as you're getting started and thinking about the opportunity of which lots we think are best suited for which kinds of projects. There's a little one sheet on each lot that looks like this, provided again in Appendix B, that scope of services. It gives an aerial photo, a side photo, and a little bit of information about street frontage, exact zoning, etc. So I recommend that everyone look through those. This is how we'll be evaluating the proposals. In the first couple pages of the RFP, I believe it starts on page 8, there's an actual narrative about what we expect in a proposal. It includes identifying your activation strategy, timeline, a variety of other things. Once we're evaluating the proposals, we'll be evaluating them based on these criteria. So the originality and quality of your idea, whether it seems replicable and scalable, your expertise and knowledge of the local area, whether you've had a chance to engage with local groups. We recognize that some bidders may not be extremely familiar with the local community. EDC would love to help matchmake, so to speak. If we can provide you with good contacts to community groups so that you can get a better sense, we would be delighted to do that. There are also some people here who I know would love to have their input shared, so please stick around afterwards and drink more coffee and network. But certainly EDC would like to do that role, and we very much encourage local groups to respond, but also for the local community to be active with others from outside the community who have expertise about these kinds of temporary activation projects. In terms of qualifications, we'll be looking that you've provided similar services in the past or have strong experience running similar kinds of projects, that you have the organizational capacity to execute this kind of a program on a pretty short timeline. We'll also be looking more broadly at the budget, how that fits into our broader program budget, and the feasible timeline for program development and operations. This I just wanted to flag because it's a little confusing in the RFP. We require 7 hard copy proposals from you. That's so that we can distribute it to everyone who needs to read it on our side, and 1 electronic copy on a thumb drive or a CD. The proposal should be divided into 3 envelopes, 1 for your proposal, 1 for the doing business data form, which is required of anyone doing business with the city, and 1 for your proposed price bid. Proposals are due to EDC in our office no later than 4 o'clock on Monday, July 1st. So the RFP is open for 2 months. We hope that leaves lots of time, but we also hope that if we can be of any assistance to you, that you all come to us if we can clarify or again help matchmake between different groups that we've been speaking with who might be interested. This is our timeline for the temporary activation RFP. Questions are being taken after this presentation. We will write up all the responses and put them up on EDC's website, but we'll also be accepting questions via email through May 29th at noon. So if you leave here or next week you realize there's another question you have, please feel free to shoot it to vacantlots@nycedc.com. We will post all of the answers to today's session and that email address on our website on June 5th. So again, hopefully that leaves lots of time to review those answers and incorporate them into your proposal. When the RFP comes in on July 1st, we'll spend the month of July reading them and inviting our top respondents in for interviews. as is said in the RFP, we could hire as many as 15 consultants. That number will depend on proposed budgets, whether proposals are for the same lot. It'll kind of depend on the overall composition of the responses. So it's hard to know between that 0 and 15 number exactly how many, but we certainly could invite a lot of people in for interviews, and that'll be the month of July. That'll also be when some contract negotiation happens. If there are certain things that we would like to see another version of, that'll be when that happens. We'll aim to select winning respondents hopefully by end of July, and then we'll spend August really finalizing contract negotiations, doing the necessary city background checks, and kind of getting all the procedural ducks in a row. Then hopefully, as early as September, we'll begin our contracts so that all of the development and finalization can begin, so that particularly things like retail strategies that might want to be open for the Christmas season, holiday season, so that you have time to be open for that, but also urban agriculture, so you have the fall, that sort of thing. So that's the ideal timeline. Now I'm going to pass it over, we're going to shift to the 3 lots that are available for permanent disposition, and at the end we'll do questions for both RFPs.
Okay, good morning. My name is Emily Mikulitz, and I'm joined by Susan Goldfinger. We're from the Real Estate Transactions Group here, which is involved with EDC's more traditional land sales and ground leases. So as Elena mentioned, I'll be telling you about the 3 sites that are available for permanent disposition. So here's an overview of those 3 sites. As you can see, the purple boundary is the East New York Industrial Business Zone. So sites 1 and 2 are located within those boundaries, and site 3 is just outside. The sites range in size from around 2,000 to 3,000 to over 20,000 square feet.